What if I told you that the wealthiest man in the city, the one with the sprawling estates and endless luxuries, was living a life emptier than most people could imagine? Sounds unbelievable, right? But Ethan Carter's story flips every assumption you've ever had about success. He had it all: fame, fortune, power. Yet behind the grand gates of his mansion, he hid a heartbreaking secret. He couldn't have children, and it haunted him every single day. Now here's where the story takes a shocking turn. Ethan, the billionaire who seemed untouchable, crossed paths with Clara, a humble maid who came from nothing but carried herself with grace and strength. Their connection was so unexpected that it left everyone around them stunned. People laughed, whispered, and judged. How could someone like him fall for someone like her, they said. But what happened next silenced every critic. You're about to uncover the incredible journey of how a man who had everything found meaning in the one place he least expected. And Clara. She didn't just change Ethan's life. She gave him something no amount of money could buy. Curious? Let's dive in, because this story will challenge everything you thought you knew about love, family, and true wealth. Ethan Carter, a self-made billionaire in his mid-40s, was the kind of man everyone admired from a distance. With sprawling estates in Manhattan and a portfolio that spanned industries, he seemed to embody success. Yet behind closed doors, Ethan faced a crushing loneliness that his wealth couldn't fix. Even more painful was the burden of infertility, a secret that weighed heavily on him, eroding his confidence and joy. Have you ever wondered how someone can have everything and still feel like they're missing the most vital piece of their life? Life, however, has a curious way of shaking things up. One chilly afternoon in Boston, Ethan crossed paths with a young woman named Clara, who worked at a modest flower stall on a busy corner. She was in her late 20s, vibrant, with an air of resilience that stood out against the backdrop of her simple surroundings. Ethan stopped, not because he needed flowers, but because something about Clara's energy drew him in. Have you ever met someone who made you question everything with just a glance? That's exactly how Ethan felt in that fleeting moment. Clara didn't recognize the man standing before her. To her, he was just another customer, quiet, polite, and seemingly thoughtful. But for Ethan, this was more than a random transaction. There was something disarming in Clara's demeanor, her genuine smile, and her ability to make a stranger feel seen. It was as if, for the first time in years, someone had pierced through the polished armor he wore. Think about how rare it is to meet someone who can bring warmth to your coldest days without even trying. That brief encounter lingered with Ethan as he returned to his penthouse that night. He couldn't help but wonder, could this seemingly insignificant meeting have unlocked a door he hadn't dared to open before? As he stared out at the city lights, he realized he might be on the brink of something life-changing, even if he didn't fully understand it yet. Ethan's life, though outwardly perfect, was marked by a growing sense of emptiness. His inability to have children gnawed at him daily, creating a void that no amount of wealth could fill. One evening, after another business meeting that felt more like a chore than a triumph, he decided to break free from his rigid routine. Without much thought, he headed to the nearest train station and boarded the first train leaving the city. Sometimes stepping into the unknown is the only way to find yourself, isn't it? On that train, fate took the reins. Ethan, lost in his thoughts, found himself seated across from Clara. She looked different from when he first saw her at the flower stall, less formal, more relaxed, but just as captivating. As she struggled to balance her belongings, a sudden jolt of the train caused her to drop a book. Ethan instinctively bent down to pick it up, and in doing so, their eyes met. It was a brief moment, but it carried a weight neither of them could ignore. Ever experienced a moment so serendipitous that it feels almost scripted? This was one of those. Their conversation started hesitantly, as strangers often do. Clara, candid and unguarded, talked about her long commute and the challenges of working multiple jobs to support her younger brother. Ethan, though usually reserved, found himself drawn to her authenticity. For once, he wasn't being seen as Ethan Carter, the billionaire. He was just a man on a train, connecting with someone real. Imagine the relief of shedding your titles and masks, even for a little while. As the train rolled into its next station, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter wasn't random. Clara's unfiltered honesty was like a mirror, reflecting parts of himself he'd long ignored. When she stepped off the train with a wave and a warm smile, Ethan sat back deep in thought. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of change. Fate has a way of weaving lives together in the most unexpected ways. A few weeks after their encounter on the train, Ethan made a decision that would alter his life forever. He hired Clara as a housekeeper for his estate. At first, she hesitated to accept the job, unsure of what it would mean to work for a man so far removed from her world. But the offer was too good to refuse, especially with her brother's needs weighing heavily on her shoulders. And so, Clara found herself stepping into Ethan's grand mansion, a stark contrast to the modest apartment she called home. Clara's arrival brought a fresh energy into Ethan's life. She wasn't intimidated by his wealth or reputation, and she didn't sugarcoat her words to impress him. Her straightforwardness was both refreshing and unnerving. One morning, Ethan fell ill unexpectedly, and it was Clara who rushed to his side, administering basic care with a calmness that belied her worry. Her compassion was palpable, and in that vulnerable moment, Ethan saw something rare. A person who genuinely cared, not because of what he could offer, but because of who he was. Have you ever had someone show up for you in a way that redefines your understanding of kindness? Their interactions grew more frequent, and with each passing day, Clara's resilience and warmth left an indelible mark on Ethan. She treated him like a regular man, not the billionaire with the world at his feet. She spoke about her struggles with a quiet strength, sharing stories about growing up in a small town and raising her brother after their parents' untimely deaths. For Ethan, who had spent years surrounded by people interested only in his money, Clara's authenticity was a revelation. Her story reminded him of what he had lost in his pursuit of success. Still, something lingered unspoken between them. Ethan felt a growing connection, but he couldn't bring himself to fully trust it. Clara, on the other hand, remained cautious, unsure of Ethan's true intentions, and yet there was an undeniable shift in the air. Their lives, so different in every way, were slowly intertwining. But just as things seemed to be changing, the shadows of the past and the complexities of their present threatened to pull them apart. Every grand estate has its secrets, and Ethan's mansion was no exception. Among the staff was Beatrice, a long-time employee whose ambition was matched only by her jealousy. She had worked her way up, believing she was indispensable to Ethan, and had always hoped to secure a special place in his life. When Clara arrived, with her natural charm and growing bond with Ethan, Beatrice's envy began to simmer. Isn't it remarkable how easily resentment can twist one's actions? Seeing an opportunity to sabotage Clara, Beatrice devised a cruel plan. She convinced Clara that Ethan wanted his room redecorated with a theme reflecting a future family. Using subtle manipulation, she played on Clara's kind nature, knowing the gesture would be misunderstood. Clara, eager to help, poured her heart into the project, creating a warm and inviting space filled with symbolic touches of family life. She had no idea that she was walking straight into a trap. When Ethan saw the decorated room, he was blindsided. For a man who carried the weight of infertility, the imagery felt like a direct mockery of his deepest pain. He confronted Clara with anger and disbelief, accusing her of crossing boundaries she didn't even know existed. Clara, shocked and heartbroken, tried to explain, but his words cut too deep. Feeling betrayed and humiliated, she left the mansion, vowing never to return. Have you ever been caught in a situation where your good intentions were completely misunderstood? It's a pain that's hard to shake. Meanwhile, Beatrice reveled in her success, believing she had eliminated the threat Clara posed. But what she didn't count on was Ethan's sharp intuition. In the days that followed, he began to piece things together, noticing inconsistencies in Beatrice's story. The question of who truly orchestrated this mess lingered in his mind, and it wasn't long before he set out to uncover the truth. Ethan wasn't a man who let questions linger for long. The unsettling way Clara had left, her broken expression, and the lingering sense of something off all pushed him to investigate further. He began by questioning the staff subtly, piecing together details that didn't quite align with what Beatrice had told him. It didn't take long for her lies to unravel. Isn't it fascinating how the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to surface? As Ethan confronted Beatrice, her confident facade began to crumble. He presented the inconsistencies, the timelines, and finally the evidence that left no room for denial. Cornered, she admitted to orchestrating the entire situation, hoping to humiliate Clara and cement her own place in Ethan's life. The depth of her betrayal shocked him. Beatrice had worked alongside him for years, yet her envy had driven her to destroy the one person who had brought light into his dark world. Have you ever trusted someone deeply, only to discover their true colors in the most unexpected way? Without hesitation, Ethan fired Beatrice, making it clear that there was no room for manipulation in his life. But even as he rid himself of her toxicity, he was left with an overwhelming sense of guilt. Clara's departure, fueled by a misunderstanding he had so readily believed, haunted him. He replayed their last conversation in his mind, each word laced with regret. How often do we let our own wounds blind us to the truth right in front of us? As he sat in his now empty mansion, the vibrant warmth Clara had brought felt like a distant memory. Ethan knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let this story end with Clara walking away. His next move would require humility and courage, but deep down he understood that some things were worth fighting for, especially when love and redemption were at stake. Haunted by his mistakes, Ethan couldn't shake the memory of Clara's devastated face as she left his mansion. Days turned into restless nights, and with each passing moment, the realization grew stronger. He had wronged someone who deserved only kindness. Finally, one crisp morning, he made a decision. He would find Clara and make things right, no matter how far he had to go. Sometimes the hardest journeys are the ones that lead us back to the people we've hurt. Ethan's search wasn't easy. Clara had returned to her modest apartment in a quieter part of the city, focusing on rebuilding her life and caring for her younger brother. When Ethan finally tracked her down, it was at the same train station where their connection had first sparked. Standing amidst the bustling crowd, he spotted her. Nervous but resolute, he approached her with an apology that came straight from the heart. "Clara," he began, his voice trembling, "I made a terrible mistake and I can't undo it, but I want to try to make things right." Clara, guarded but curious, listened as Ethan admitted his failings. He spoke of his infertility, his pain, and how Beatrice's lies had clouded his judgment. It wasn't easy for him to bear his vulnerabilities, but he knew it was the only way to regain her trust. "You showed me what it means to care, even when you had nothing to gain. I don't just owe you an apology. I owe you my gratitude. Have you ever seen someone lay their pride aside to make amends? It's a rare, humbling sight." Moved by his sincerity, Clara softened, but she didn't give in easily. "Ethan," she said, "trust isn't rebuilt overnight. Words are one thing, but actions speak louder." Ethan, nodding, promised to prove his dedication. He then surprised her by adding, "I want to be there for you and your brother. Family isn't about blood, it's about love, and I want to create that with you if you'll let me." His words hung in the air, leaving Clara to decide whether this was truly a new beginning or just a fleeting moment of regret. Clara stood in silence, the weight of Ethan's words sinking in. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability of a man stripped of his pride but filled with hope. For a moment, she thought about everything they had been through, the misunderstandings, the pain, and the unexpected connection that had grown between them. Finally, with a cautious yet genuine smile, she extended her hand. "Let's see where this goes," she said softly. "Isn't it remarkable how a single act of forgiveness can pave the way for something entirely new?" From that moment, Ethan embraced not only Clara, but also her younger brother Sam as part of his life. He traded his vast empty mansion for a home that felt alive, filled with laughter, shared meals, and the kind of love money could never buy. Slowly, Clara's guarded heart began to trust, and Ethan showed her through actions, not just words, that he was committed to being the man she deserved. Have you ever noticed how the smallest gestures, like fixing dinner together or cheering on someone at a school event, can create the strongest bonds? Their union wasn't without its challenges. Ethan had to adapt to a life that was far from the luxury he once knew, and Clara had to learn to let someone share her burdens, but these obstacles only made them stronger. One sunny afternoon, with Sam grinning in the background, Ethan got down on one knee and proposed to Clara. It wasn't a grand, flashy affair. It was intimate and heartfelt, much like their journey together. Her answer, of course, was yes. Their story became a symbol of how love can bridge even the widest gaps between wealth and humility, pain and healing, loneliness and connection. As onlookers at the train station clapped and cheered, the couple shared a kiss that seemed to seal not just a promise, but a new chapter of life. Together, they proved that family is built not by circumstance, but by the choices we make to love and care for one another, no matter where we come from. So what did Ethan and Clara's story teach you? Maybe it's that life's most precious gifts often come from the most unexpected places, or perhaps it's a reminder that love, forgiveness, and second chances can transform even the most broken circumstances into something beautiful. Now ask yourself, are you ready to let go of judgments, take bold steps, and embrace the possibilities life might be offering you right now? Think about it. What's one thing you can do today to open your heart to change? Is it reaching out to someone you've wronged, taking a chance on a relationship you've been hesitant about, or simply choosing gratitude for what you already have? Don't just sit there. Take action. The smallest step could lead to the biggest transformation. And before you go, let me ask, what's stopping you from living your own powerful story? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. There's so much more to learn, and I promise the best is yet to come. Let's keep growing together.